Did you happen to catch Johnny Voodoo's video? Check out the link below. Now, what I want to get into today is how we've created that and how we come to getting that super vibrant, colourful floor. So Johnny wanted to create a custom colour barber studio, and the floor, he had the request of something being super specific. So we had Kev from Unique Epoxy approach me. He had a little swatch that was ultimately what looked like a specific green glitter colour, and it had a little bit of depth to it. And so that's all I had to work from. So Kev wasn't 100% sure how to obtain that, so we troubleshooted how to go about it, and we come up with the result of using what is our ResiArt fine glitter in our forest green. But to get the actual right tone of it, my suggestion was to actually put a tinted layer over the top of it using our translucent dye. With regards to flooring, it's probably one of the first to create such a custom colour. So it's pretty special, and that's why we wanted to get into it. Now, we're using Resi Glaze here today just to give you a little bit of an example of how to recreate that colour combination. But with regards to the flooring side of it, there's a little bit more involved. So the glaze was used from the parent company, All-Purpose Coatings, and there was a lot more prep involved. So with regards to doing custom floors, especially when you're touching on things like metallic marble floors or anything like this with glitter and using the glaze products, there's a little bit more flow that's happening with the resin. So things like ensuring that your floor is ground correctly, that those prime and base coats are put on correctly, but also a sacrificial leveling coat as well, because it's imperative to make sure that your floor or your baseboard or whatever you're working on is level, because your resin will only level to the surface it's on. It ended up being a super vibrant, funky floor and really suits Johnny Voodoo's barber studio down to a T. So let's get creating. Pre-mixed our Resi Glaze here, and I'm going to basically add in our glitter and show you what happens. A good chunk of my glaze into the cup here. Glaze is a really good product because of its self-leveling abilities, and so it is ideal for use in floors or if you're creating like an artboard like this. Now, glitter, on the other hand, you can never have too much glitter. And what we really need to happen is have a full coverage over the base with the glitter. So I know that Kev did a sacrificial layer and he did do a green layer of epoxy underneath. I'm working on a whiteboard here today. So my aim is to probably put in a little bit more glitter than what Kev did, but I know that he ended up using about 9 tubs of glitter on his small square meter area. So it is important to make sure that you have enough coverage. When you are putting it in, things like your glaze, the glitter will sink. The glaze will be poured a couple of mil thick, so the glitter is going to sink to the bottom, and we have that level of glaze on top, which is where our dye comes in. So we have to make sure we've got enough glitter so it sinks evenly across that area, and we can spread it out so it's got good coverage on the floor or your artboard. So we've got our forest green. I'm going to put heaps in. Like I said, you can never have too much glitter. So I'm just going to keep going, because I do want really good concentrated coverage on this board here. But this is ultimately what Kev had to do as well, is put in a great deal of glitter, but you also have heaps of advantages with that. With such a glittery floor, the way it captures light on every angle, from light coming in the window, the door, your lighting in the room. So that is one advantage of having a sparkly floor, is it looks super cool on all angles. We'll start with that. That's a fair amount. And we'll give it a mix in. Good way to test it is when I lift my stirrer up, if it looks like I've got good concentrated colour amounts. If it looks like I'm lifting it and my speckles of glitter are sort of separated and I can see some clear in behind, it means I probably need to add some more. So I've got a fair amount of concentration here, which is great. I think I'm pretty safe moving forward. If in doubt, add more. But I'm pretty confident that I got a fair bit in there. So now, to achieve the certain green tone that was required, that's where the translucent dye comes in. So the translucent dye we're using is Kelly Green. So we've got our forest green, which is true to its name, and the Kelly green is more like a jade green. So it just gives it that slightly different tone of green. And because it's translucent, it means we don't lose the sparkle of the glitter, but we just get to change that tone of the green. I'm laying this layer down with a little bit of this in, but I'll also come back and put another completely translucent Kelly green glaze layer down as well. So on Kev's floor, there was a number of bottles of the translucent dye used as well. The dye does go a long way, but we'll pop some of that in, mix it in. And the next step is to basically apply it. So when you're talking about putting it on a floor, there's a lot of things to consider. Obviously, you're going to be pouring down your ribbons of epoxy and then spreading it out, but what you've got to consider is how the glitter's moving and how it sort of sinks straight away to the floor. So you don't want to leave too many lines in where you're moving it around, especially because you don't want to see differences in the glitter. You want a nice even surface. So I have a little bit more control when I'm putting it on an artboard, but when it does come to a larger space, you've really got to consider being really careful with how much you're sort of pushing it and moving it and making sure you're just doing it lightly so you're getting that coverage of the glitter and making sure it's even. This is the fun bit. This is seeing it all come out now. I'm just going straight in just to show you guys how it can come out. So I'm going to pour most of it on the board and spread it around a bit. Again, very similar to how you're going to do it with a floor. You want to move it around, you want to have it self-level over the entire surface. Difference is, I'm not using an applicator tool or a T-bar. I'm just going to use my hand. So, like I said, we've got to be careful. And here's a great example. Like if I move it, you can see that all of a sudden underneath, you can see where my glitter has moved away from that area. So I want to sort of push it around loosely from the top. I don't want to scratch the bottom of my glitter and my baseboard too much. I want to move it around so I can make sure I've still got that nice even coverage of the glitter. I'm glad that Kev had the skill to be able to manage to work on a floor with larger square meters. He knew exactly what he was doing though, so it definitely comes down to using an installer that's open to the vision and being able to help you create your custom floor. I'm going to pour a little bit more on this outside edge. We can see our glitter's just starting to thin up. Actually, that's a tip as well. Say if you are pouring out your floors and you left your resin in your bucket, or even when you're creating with your art, glitter does want to sink. So I want to give it a quick stir before I go and apply it again, so I make sure I've got my glitter well suspended within the mixture. I've mixed in a fair amount of bubbles into my glitter and Kelly green glaze. So I do want to manage this on the floor. If you quickly run over it with a blowtorch, generally that'll help pop your bubbles, get you that nice glassy smooth surface. Here today I'm going to use Isopropyl because I am working at our manufacturing department and flames are prohibited, so there will be no blowtorch to hit it. Just give it a nice fine mist. Let it self-level again. That helps manage any of those bubbles. So I will be coming back and putting another layer on this, and I'm going to do that at the time where the resin is basically just hit its cure point, which is a 24-hour period for the glaze. So we will be adding an additional layer and showing you how to level up if you're going to put this on a floor. This was very specific to Johnny Voodoo's brand. If you want to create something amazing that's one of a kind, that really captures the essence of you, your business, whether it's, a beauty salon, a nail salon, even your home office, your games room, the options are really endless, then why not try another color combination or another floor? People think of glitter as just something sparkly and pretty, But when you're transforming it on the floor, it just gives you another level of a custom floor. So that's what I want to touch on. And I know metallic marble epoxy floors are in at the moment, and I think that they are absolutely amazing, those floors. But when you're leveling it up and just giving another element, which is something like the sparkle with glitter, I think that it's an option that you guys need to invest in, so you can really see the outcome after we've seen Johnny Voodoo's floor. I'm going to create another colour now. I have our Resi Chunky Fairyland here, but I'm also going to level it up with a little bit of our violet dye and a little bit of our magenta dye. So let's get mixing. And with this one, I think I want to put even more glitter in. It is a chunkier glitter. It's heavier again. It does sink more. I'm not spoonfulling it in, I'm throwing it in. I want to make sure I have full coverage of the floor. And it's almost like it's a cross between iridescent and holographic too, so it throws a different colour, this Fairyland. So you've got a combination of your pink in here, which is almost like a magenta purpley pink, but if you look at it on a different angle, it throws a green. So this is another element that on a floor would look absolutely amazing because you can get that colour shift happening. Okay, the stirrer test. I have a little bit of clarity coming through, so I might add another whole lot of our chunky glitter in. That's better. So I've got a lot more coverage happening now. The combination of violet and magenta in here, so that way it's not just a full pink translucent, it does have that tone of that purple to it, but at the same time I didn't want to turn it completely purple, so that's why I'm using two. And this is where what Johnny Voodoo was after. This is where this color combination comes in, and you can create a custom color. So if you've got a specific color for your business and you want a color match, you have the ability to create that with a number of different colors combined. So I'll pop in some magenta and just a couple of drops of our violet. It's about 4. And once again, because our glitter sinks, what's left is a layer of what is basically our glaze sitting on top. And if we're tinting it, we've got a nice color to it. Okay. I think we could probably go a little bit more with our tint. Same thing, I'm looking at it, and as I'm seeing my glitter slip down, the color that's left behind in my glaze isn't super strong, so I'm going to add a little bit more in. And this is where your test patches become quite important, is taking note of how much you're using when you're doing a test and multiplying that by obviously the square meters of the area that you're going to be applying on. So doing samples and tests is always quite important. Okay, now I can see more color coming through. All right, let's get it on there. Woo! We've got like a disco happening. There we go, nightclub floor with some anti-slip. I actually think this color really works. It's vibrant, it's got depth, it's not overly feminine. There we go. Johnny Voodoo, eat your heart out. This is your next floor. This is super funky, and I can really see it working as a floor. But we want to give it that little bit more of depth. Because I am using a chunkier glitter, the same thing can happen on the floor. You may get little bits of your glitter stick up and layer on top of one another. So the aim is to put another thin glaze layer, help it self-level over the top, and just give it that real glossy shine. So we're gonna wait 24 hours, we're gonna come back and we're gonna top this piece up. So our sample boards have cured overnight and they're looking absolutely amazing. Super funky, super bold, bright, sparkly. I also had a little bit left over of the green, which was the replica of Johnny Voodoo's floor. In this little leftover dispenser cup, you can actually see how the glitter has sunk on the bottom half, and we've got more of your tinted layer of glaze on top. So that's another reason why we use the tint, to add a little bit of a color tone to your glitter and have our glitter sort of sink flat on the bottom layer of what is your board or your flooring. So this is a really good example of that. And I can see on my, what is the Fairyland chunky glitter, I can also see my slightly pink purple tone sitting on top of that in the glaze as well. I want to level it up. If you have a flooring that you want to brand and keep it really specific to your brand, you can put on basically a decal of your logo, just ensuring that it is a raw vinyl, that it has no coatings or anything like that on the top, because as soon as it has a coating on it, there is a chance that your epoxy can repel from it. But I'm going to pop those on these, and then we're going to apply one more coat of glaze, which I have already pre-mixed up, but we're going to add some tint back to it. So Kelly green for our green, and also a little bit of magenta back into our Fairyland piece. But can imagine this would be on a big, I guess in one of your rooms, whether you decide it to be, you know, your barber shop or your private office or games room, and you did want a logo through the center of it, you'd want it quite large and center to really have that impact of your brand coming across. So I'll pop this one on first. I want to make sure it is pretty centered and even. If you were doing this on a floor, it'd be something that I'd highly recommend putting guidelines down and actually marking up to ensure that it is 100% straight. We're just going with it today. And already I'm slightly off. And when you are applying these types of decals down on your floor, a fair amount of pressure needs to be added. You have to ensure that you've got no contamination on the floor or any like surface contaminants, dust or anything like that on there. So it does have to be nice and clean before putting it down. Adding pressure and possibly a little bit of heat as you're removing the top clear layer as well. So I do have a heat gun as a backup if we need that at this stage to heat it up a little bit. I will just test and see if it's going to peel away easy and leave my underneath layer with that little bit of pressure. So for the most part, a little bit of pressure has worked well removing this one. Even using an old plastic card or an old credit card to help force it down does help as well. We've got another one that we're going to apply on our Fairyland board. This one may require a little bit of heat though, because we've got a lot of fine writing, fine font in this one. And once again, I would probably pre-mark where you want it if you were doing something as a professional finish. So I'm going to throw a little bit of heat on this one. Push it down flat. And we'll start to peel away. Yep. Keep an eye on your full letter. Don't do what I just did, where it was coming off the bottom, but not on the top portion. There we go. Got it off. And I can already see that it looks like the lettering's just floating above what is the Fairyland chunky glitter. So it's going to look really nice when we get that other layer on it to give it more depth as well. Popping my gloves on, and we will be popping in our Kelly green to go on top of our forest green fine glitter, and a little bit of magenta in on top of our Fairyland chunky glitter. That's 6 drops at the moment. We're going to stir them in and see how deep our colour looks. Magenta, I can afford to put a little bit more in because I know it's actually a paler dye, not as concentrated. I'm happy with that. I don't want to go too dark. I am putting obviously a tint over the top of a white logo, so that will tint my logo up as well. Always something to consider whether you're deciding on going black, white, or the colors of your logo itself. And not as much of a concern when we're going over a black logo. And I think that's enough as well. Enough just to help tone down a little bit of the forest green fine glitter color and just give it a tiny bit more of a jade green finish. And this is how these customizations work. So you're able to pick a color close to what you want, and then the tones using translucent dyes to tint it up can actually change the look of the color slightly to perfect it to match exactly what you need. If you were to leave this board or floor for too long, you would need to do a light sand on it, then apply your decal. Because you want to make sure that you've got good adhesion, so you need not only your chemical bond, but a mechanical bond as well. And I'm going to spread this out again. Bring it to my edges. Okay, onto our green. If you are doing this on a larger scale and it is, for instance, on your custom floor, this stage is really important. This is why you need a qualified installer who knows what they're doing, because as this portion is drying on these layers, you want to ensure that no dust, fine fibers, pet hairs, insects, things like that land on it. So you do want to have a room that is completely taped off, sealed up, dust-free, and that's all a part of the preparation process that is involved with your installer. And at this point, if this was your floor, you'd be running over it in your spikes with a blowtorch, but because I'm in a position where we can't use them right here in this studio at the moment, I'm going to give it a spray with isopropyl, just to get out the bubbles that are in this mixture, because there's nothing coming through from my board now. Everything has been sealed up from us doing our glitter coat. So now this stage, any bubbles that are in this mixture are basically what I've mixed into it. So we'll remove those and then we let it cure and sit there. And you have one hell of an amazing floor if you're putting this on your floor. So if you've got any questions about this, hit them in the comments below or reach out to us. Always happy to recommend our high installers for custom work. We work together with those installers to create these custom colors specifically for you. And otherwise, subscribe, like, and we'll see you guys next time.